The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we'll review Austin's frustrating 2-2 draw against the Houston Dynamo. We'll preview this weekend's home match against FC Dallas. We'll cover some other Austin FC news, including some player rumors. And then we're going to get to all of the other listener questions we didn't get to last week. My name is Landon Cotta, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And Landon, you seem to be, you're dragging a little bit, buddy. You want to go into that? Like, hopefully nobody will notice throughout the context of the show, but in the sort of the pre-show talk and the look on your face, it seems like maybe.
We just had a weekend that was for younger people than we are, if that makes sense. We played a soccer game on Saturday. Ashley went for a big run on Saturday, and then we went out to the game, and it was very hot and frustrating. And then the next day, we went and floated the river, and we're out in the sun drinking beer for many hours in a row. And there was a point in my life where that wouldn't have fazed me so much, and that is not the point that I'm currently at.
Well, I'm glad to see you made it back. I think it'll be a fun show regardless, and hopefully people won't notice too much. So on Saturday, Jackson and I always make this pre-match lap, and we were walking around. One, fist bumped your dad in the South End somewhere. I don't know where he was going. I don't know where we were going, but we just like crossed paths, fist bump, and kept on going. And then I happened to, we were getting snow cones on the east side, right? On the concourse there. There's like a snow cone dessert stand. And I ran into a guy that saw that I wish we would score more goals hat. And he's like, that's my hat, man. And so his name is Steven. And he's the guy that sells the hat.
All right.
And his buddy was with him as a listener, but it was like great to see him, and continues to be, my belief on the night. And gosh, man, like one more goal would have been great.
Yeah.
Or one here for Houston. I don't know how.
I might be conflating these guys and somebody else, but I kind of think I have a friend in common with them as well. It's like not a soccer friend. And so, but I've never met them. So maybe one day I'll run into him too. But yeah, one more goal would have done it, huh?
Yes, it would have. So I think the next thing we have to go into, let's go on the story of the week. So like Austin builds his 2-0 lead early, gives it up in the last 2 minutes to draw Houston 2-2. And we can get into the details on that. But even with the draw, Austin's still in 7th in the West, still has games in hand on the people behind them, like doesn't really lose a lot of positions in the table, maybe because of how everybody else does. And I feel like the number one thing we have to talk about is the danger of predictions. So when we interviewed Marcelo Balboa last week on the show, mentioned that Austin and Houston had played 13 times. They had never drawn. Marcelo's pick was 3-3. I was like, oh no, it's going to be 0-0 and boring. He was almost right, And then I ran into Phil West on the concourse right before the game, and Phil West is like, 3-0 victory. Like, book it. We're looking good. And for the first half, I was like, Phil was right, or maybe it's going to be even a bigger blowout than Phil thought. So again, don't predict anything.
Yeah, someone forced me to make a prediction on the concourse before, and I said, I hate making predictions. And he was like, well, just do it anyway. And I said, 100-2. We're going to win 100-2. So I wish that would have been the case. But you mentioned our position in the table. What makes it more frustrating, I mean, it's part of why this isn't a huge deal is that we're still in decent position. But what makes that frustrating is we could have kind of put Houston away and put ourselves into a really good position. And we're still not in bad shape, but like whenever you have those 3 points in your hand against that opponent for like rivalry reasons and table reasons, it makes it even more frustrating to let those 2 extra points slip away and just get the 1.
Yeah, so just at a high level, we'll get into this in detail later, but like what goes so right in the first half in your mind? And if you look at the momentum charts, there's a very obvious moment like 65-ish minutes in, right before the subs, because at first it was like, is it just the subs? But it was like starting to crack apart before the subs that went so wrong in the second half. If you were looking at it, just like at the summary level.
So I think there's like a confluence of things that all kind of happen around the same time. It is Houston making some subs where, yeah, Houston bring on Lawrence Anali, who was supposed to be a huge signing for them last year. I think he tore his ACL, is just now coming back. So they bring him on. They move McGlynn more central. They also, shortly after that, take Ponce, their striker, off and bring on Kowalczyk and Bassi, who are attack-minded midfielders kind of playing in the pockets where they had nobody playing in those areas before. That comes to the time when you take Ilie Sanchez off the field. You lose his leadership, his organizational abilities. Also, people are just getting tired and losing focus in this part of the game. And then the pin comes, and all those things together catch Austin in a vulnerable moment and energize Houston at that exact moment. And I think all of that kind of combined to give us the result that we ended up seeing instead of the one that we thought we were going to get.
Well, then taking it back to the first half, like what did you see in the first half that made you think that it was going to be a big Austin win on the night, like as it was in terms of the results from that point? But like Austin gets those like a couple opportunities that are really high XG. They convert both of them, but Austin really did look like by far the better team for the first half of the match. Oh, something else we can curse predictions for is I think at halftime, our friend Nick talked about how Austin was ahead 2-0, and clearly we were impervious to the weather. And then all of a sudden we got tighter in the second half. So like maybe don't say things like that at halftime, but like what did you love about the first half?
Yeah, I didn't think that Austin was playing so much better than Houston for it to be a real blowout. I didn't think there was that big of a gulf, but Austin was playing really smartly. They were playing with patience. They were fighting and working together really well. And I thought all of that, after they were able to capitalize on a couple of the moments that Houston gave them, that if they could continue that, then they were going to be fine. That, okay, maybe they didn't deserve 2-0, but I thought they could keep 2-0. And the focus and playing smart thing went out the door. Not even wholesale. They weren't doing terrible, but just enough in the right moment for it to be enough for Houston to claw their way back in.
Yeah, and then I think another thing we have to talk about is like, is this another week to blame the refs? I think specifically on the pen, we see comments from Nico, we see comments from other players. I think Andrew Wiebe even in his like, one thing that I saw somebody comment about is the fact that Andrew Wiebe has like a segment every week to either talk about whether Pro was right or wrong. Kind of shows how unreliable Pro is. And maybe like it's sort of weird that the league is creating content based upon whether the replay officials are good at their jobs. But what did you think about it?
I thought it was quite poor. And I feel like I say this every time, but I feel like it's worth saying every time before I say the thing I'm about to say, which is I think I give a fair shake to referees most of the time. And I thought this guy did a bad job today. He just lots and lots of examples of gave our players a few very soft yellows when Andre Linger barrels into the back of Diego Rubio, giving him whiplash as he like falls to the ground. And that's like foul. And that's all, nothing else, not even a talking to. And there's just several things like that. We're just, again, consistency is all I ask for. And you get a thing like that that's not cautioned, and then the softest little touch gets called for a penalty. That is not consistency. And we'll talk about that more later on. But I think that kind of stuff does change a game, and did change a game at a very inopportune moment for Austin, when we just talked about all the things that happened all at that exact same point. And that's when it happened. And it really did change the game. So Austin could have still salvaged it after that point, and they lost focus in the wrong time. But the pin absolutely changed the game. And I think the pin was kind of a soft call.
I think you were absolutely right on that. That was one thing that I did also want to touch on before we take the break, is I feel like after the second goal, when Austin gets in these situations, where it sort of seized a draw or a potential loss from the jaws of victory. They kind of fold up shop, and I felt like the team kept working and kept fighting even after the second goal. And I don't know actually if the momentum chart or anything results that, but usually I just give up when it gets to 2-2, and I felt like the slightest bit of hope that Austin was going to like manage to rally around sort of this injustice, and somehow, you know, the ball wouldn't lie and Austin would win on the night.
They were still working super hard. I just didn't have as much faith in the players on the field at that point in time to actually do anything with that energy. And I was maybe right to think that.
Yeah. Well, the results show you were correct. Yes.
All right, let's take a quick break. Later in the show, like we said, we're going to do listener questions. We're going to preview FC Dallas. We're going to, what was the other thing we said we were going to do? Talk about some player rumors.
Rumors, yeah.
And some news. But yeah, hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment that you can check out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
I saw our buddy Ryan Riggins encouraging people in Los Verdes Slack today to take advantage of this parking thing because he said he's been using it and that he loves it. And so if you are interested in learning more about Amplify and learning how to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, you can be like Ryan and go to goamplify.com/moontower-soccer and you'll have a primo parking spot on game day.
Yeah, we had another, just right before we started recording, we had somebody else ask for the details on that again. Posted that link in there. Another satisfied fan.
And one more time, not one more time, we're probably going to do it a few more times, but wanted to plug the event that I'm going to be a part of with Progress Texas and Brad Stuver. It was previously only open for sponsors, essentially, to buy tickets and kind of name placement and stuff like that. It is now open for general admission. And so you can go, we'll have the link in the show notes here if you want to come see me and Chris Moser from Progress Texas talk to Brad about his work off the pitch and then kind of tying it to the stuff on the pitch as well. You can now go to the link in the show notes and you can buy general admission tickets for $25. This is going to be limited space, so we are expecting it to fill up and sell out. So if you think you're interested, go buy some tickets now. All right, we are back, Jeremiah. Where should we start with our pre-match narratives?
Well, I was going to start with the math on Copa Tejas, which we did last week, but that's irrelevant now. As the results show. I think the big thing is like another clean bill of health, and we got some information in the midweek press conference about who's in town. So Nicky Beloko did get game action in Sunday's closed-door scrimmage against the Charleston Battery. So he's in town. I think, was he, I saw pictures of him maybe at the Austin FC2 match or something.
Yeah.
Hanging out. And then Esteves did point out that he has not played a competitive game since May, so he still has some time, needs some time to adapt. Diego Rubio kind of followed up and said he was super impressed with Beloko. So I guess if Diego Rubio was the coach, maybe we'd expect to see him soon, but maybe not since it's Nico. And then we did get words. I wrote green card, but yeah, Djordjevic is not in town. Still waiting on the visa to come through.
Right. Yeah. I don't. Do we need to talk about, like, I've heard more frustration with both of these situations in the last week. Is there anything else to cover here, or should we move on?
No, let's go. I love frustration. Let's get into it.
Are you frustrated with not seeing Beloko, or are you like, Do you like buy or understand Nico's point that he's just not fit yet?
Well, I buy and understand Nico's point, and that's a long time to go without playing. And I feel like frustration is maybe a holdover from the previous coach, and it maybe not even be like accurate narrative about whether people that Josh Wolf signed got to play, anytime after they came to town. And I mean, at this point, these summer signings come so late in the season. I think I've just come to expect not much, if anything, during the regular season from anybody that we happen to sign during this window.
Yeah, and the way you're training the rest of the team is you're not training them to get match fit. They are already there, and so your trainings look much different than they would need to for a guy who is essentially in preseason. And so it's hard to get him up to speed when, like, maybe I know with who was the last person we brought in? One of the last signings we brought in, they were playing games like pre-week or midweek scrimmages with the second team to get match fit. And that's helpful, but it's not the same as a real game. And we just can't build training around one guy who's not ready to play yet. And so I am anxious to see him. Because I like what I've seen on film. I think he could be a useful piece, but I also get that it's going to take some time with the guy coming in this scenario. And I did have someone ask about Beloko and Georgievich, was my buddy Dan that I saw on the in the concourse the other day. He was like, "Why do we even sign these guys if they're not going to play?" Which is a valid question. Like, if you don't think you're going to get them in this season, then why sign them? It's like, well, we still need players for next season, and if we wait until the off season to sign everyone we're going to need next year, then we're getting them up to speed at that point. And so, I think you sign the guys you can sign when you can sign them, and then play them when they're ready. And so, like Beloko especially, he was free. He was out of contract. And so, yes, sign him now. Take your time getting him up to speed, and he'll hopefully be ready at the end of this year, and then we'll definitely be ready next year. Same with Georgievich. Like, I'm sure there was other teams trying to buy him. And so if you passed up on him now, he's probably not available in the winter. And so get him when you can get him, and then we'll play him when he's ready.
Yeah, I get it's just not very exciting to
a
group of fans that are like looking for something, looking for the next, big guy. I think it's less frustrating and challenging, like with these guys, because these are not DPs, these are not your top of the roster TAM players. So hopefully people have a little more patience with them than other, like when Osman Bukhari signed last summer. Like the expectations were super high, and they didn't turn out, but like it seems more understandable that you would feel that way when it's that type of signing, and not just like a dude who will be a contributor and is probably better than whoever they're replacing. But the whole season is not going to hinge on whether either one of these guys gets up in town and gets up to form quickly.
Yeah. All right, let's move into the game. The lineup, is this exact same lineup we saw in the previous game?
It is. I feel like this is kind of the lineup right now.
Yeah, and I'm happy with that, because if it's working, keep it going. And everyone's rested since we had the time off. So yeah, it's Stuver in goal, back line of Dessler, Svatak, Heinzike, Biro, Sanchez, and Pereira in central midfield, Bukhari and Wolf as the wingers / wide midfielders. And then again, the 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1 debate. Uzuni was the out and out 9. Rubio was playing high on the line sometimes, but often dropping into the midfield and playing as it was a bit more fluid today. So sometimes he and Danny would both be playing kind of the 10 roles opposite each other. Sometimes Danny would be deeper and Owen would float into those pockets. So it's all very fluid, but I think more or less Rubio was playing the 10 and Uzuni was playing the 9.
Yeah, I think that's exactly true. And I think, I think Rubio does a pretty good job of this. He's just like, he's going to run out of juice at some point. But like, if you need a guy to do this role for 60 minutes, I feel like he's a pretty good guy to have doing it. And I think it's an improvement from what we've seen from him in the past. Like this year, I feel like he's really developed in that spot. Maybe they were playing him in the wrong place before, but I'm happy with what I've seen from him.
Yeah. I mean, I think he is still limited in general, just because he's slowing down a little bit. But in that position specifically, I think he has limits. And those limits are like, I don't think a team with him as their primary chance creator is going to make a deep run in the playoffs. But I think a team with him as their primary chance creator can make the playoffs. And that's what we're trying to do right now, right? So it's good enough for now. If that's like the long-term solution, that's a concern, but I don't think that's the case.
I doubt that's the case either. I think the long-term solution may come down to what we just talked about who's available and when, but for now, he's good enough. So let's get into the game. Like we've talked about early on, Austin has a solid first half. Austin does a good job of making the big chances count. He has some Osman Bukhari notes. I felt like he had a very Osman Bukhari night, right? Like he was dangerous and creative, but just still a little bit lacking in some way.
Yeah, Austin started the game. I mentioned this earlier. Started the game playing patient, playing disciplined. Houston was defending much more compactly than the teams we've been playing the last few weeks. So we've been finding Rubio, finding Owen, finding Danny in those pockets in the midfield. And those spaces just weren't really there all that much in the first half against Houston. So Austin was moving the ball, probing for those openings, occasionally trying to hit one of the forwards with something more vertical, either in transition or after we kind of break their defense open. And so it didn't look like it was going to turn into 2-0 immediately, but it felt like Austin was comfortable in the game. And then, Bukhari gets the first real chance for Austin of the game with a header that goes just over the bar. Starts with Owen and Danny playing a little 1-2 up the left side. Owen cuts it back into the path of Danny in the box, but Danny wasn't really looking for it. It was like, if this is what Owen was trying to do, it was almost too clever of a pass that Danny didn't think he was going to get it back. But Ilie wins the loose ball, recycles it back out to Owen. He puts it across to the back post, and Bukhari just reacts really quickly, does well to fight across the defender and get a head on it, but he can't quite get over it and get his head on top of it, and it goes over the bar. But I liked the effort there. And then the next big moment is that first goal for Austin. This is in the 32nd minute, and Ilie scores on a set piece rebound from his own rebounded header. In the post-game press conference, Nico gives credit to his assistant, Nico Bosk, who is the set piece coach. He said they spotted a vulnerability and worked on some stuff, and it paid off in the very first corner. Like, do you think this is exactly what they drew up, or is it just like, no, we kind of thought this strategy might lead to something and it happened to fall to Ilie, or was like, no, put it on Ilie's head. We're going to part the Red Sea and he's going to be able to score an easy one.
Put it on Ilie's head. Yeah. With everything that's I would say, I think maybe the opportunity, maybe the original opportunity was the one that the set piece coach deserves credit for, but good for Ilie was sticking with it. And this doesn't always happen, but like both those goals happen on the south end in front of us. And so it's always fun to be able to like watch those up close and see him celebrate the guy. And Ilie is a guy that I think a lot of people kind of got down on and felt like he was a drag on the club. And he's at a certain age, but I feel like over the last few weeks, as a part of this offensive resurgence, like he's really proved his value out too. And I don't think we can count on him to score a bunch of goals, but I think this night was another night where he was a leader, on the field, not just through like directing traffic, but also just like with his play.
Yeah, for sure. So this is from a corner. Owen's service is like towards the penalty spot. There's one big scrum of Austin players on the near side moving towards the ball. And then I think it's Uzuni and Svatak peel off to the back post. And Ilie he starts at the top of the box. And as his teammates make those moves, this huge lane opens right up the middle of the box. And that's where the ball lands. Ilie just steps into the space, heads it down. The placement isn't good enough to beat Bond, but it's good enough that he just has to get hands on it and doesn't really get to pick where he parries it away. And so the ball falls right into that same space. And Ilie is just so open that he just pounces on it and is able to get to it without being challenged and punches it past Bond 1v1 again and gets the goal. But I think probably, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how specifically set pieces are drawn up like that. I would
Yeah.
guess the strategy had more to do with moving people in certain directions and having kind of contingency plans for certain areas. Like if the ball goes here, then this, if the ball goes here, then this. But I don't think like Owens has decent service into the box, but I don't think he's good enough at it to say
To
like
put that exactly
right. Yeah. But anyway, it worked. Ilya does well there, and we get the goal. There's kind of not much else until the second goal, which is 10 minutes later. This one is a Guilherme Biro header. Let me give you some numbers on this goal, Jeremiah. 27 passes by Austin leading up to the goal. 2 defenders eliminated by Danny Pereira just dribbling past them and being clever. 8 changes of direction inside of the penalty box by Osman Bukhari. And then 1 beautiful header by Guilherme Biro. I talked about the patience. Like patience plays a big role in this one. They were patient and looking for the right spot, but not being passive, if that makes sense. Like passive is what gets you Horseshoe of Sadness. This was being patient, but playing quickly, always looking for the opening. They're playing around the back. Danny's kind of Houston think they have him kind of trapped over on the sideline. He dribbles one guy back towards the central part of the field, and boom, it opens up. The other side is wide open. He plays it to Brendan Heinzike, and Heinzike runs 40 yards and just carries the ball past midfield. And all of a sudden, Austin's in their finishing shape. Like finishing shape is essentially the formation you want to be in when you're in the attacking third. And so whenever you play around the back and it doesn't work out, they look stupid, right? But when it works, that's why they do it, is you break one thing open and all of a sudden you're in the other end exactly where you want to be. And so we end up there. Bukhari and Danny play a little 1-2 that puts Bukhari in the box with the ball. And that's when he does his magic, where he does a little spin, does a series of little stop and go movements. Andrade, their left back, is doing a respectable job of at least staying in front of him until help can come. And Dwayne Holmes finally kind of comes in and pokes the ball away, but not far enough away. And so Bukhari uses that deflection to create some space for himself and is able to get the cross in before it goes out of bounds. And Biro does really well of just staying alert, staying patient, waiting on that backside. And when the ball finally comes in, he plays an unsavable, unblockable header into the top corner and gets his third of the season.
Yeah, it was great to see him do that. It's interesting to see another opportunity where another goal where like Brendan Hines Ike is a part of the buildup and is part of like breaking lines, because I don't think that that's something that people expect that of Brendan Hines Ike. I don't think it's something that we've seen a ton of going into this year, but like this is the second one in a row, right, where we see him really contribute on the offensive end to a goal.
Yeah, he played several good vertical passes, especially later on as Houston was getting pulled out, trying to push the game a little bit more. He played some direct balls to Uzuni's feet again, and he's a fine passer. He's not an exceptional or great passer, but he's a smart guy and just a student of the game. And I think he's the kind of guy, if you watch film and say, hey, look for this is going to be there, he'll look for it and he'll play the pass. It might not always come off, but he's the kind of guy who will learn and look for it.
Well, so this one goes to halftime. Austin on the front foot, maybe not completely, totally deserved from the scoreline. 2-0, and I think everybody's feeling good about it.
And then that was all that happened in the game ended, half. Right?
Yeah, and then the game ended just as we all thought it would be. And Phil West was right, and it was a 3-0 final somehow.
Yeah, Houston comes out, they make some adjustments, but Austin's still looking okay, getting some chances. Owen Wolf gets a chance in the 52nd minute. Rubio steals the ball off of Andre Linger in the midfield, turns upfield, plays a long diagonal ball into space for Owen to run onto in the box. He's 1v1 with Antonio Carlos, gets a shot away, whips it at the far post, and it is just inches wide. Like he can't get his foot quite far enough around it, but man, that would have been great to put it away right there. And I don't think it's probably not fair to say like Owen should have scored that one, right? Like he did really well to even get the shot off at all, but it would have been really cool if he did score.
Yeah, it would have been really cool. I think it's one where you have to give him some grace because he creates that opportunity that he's like pretty unique in being able to do. So that if he doesn't finish on it, it's probably something that not a lot of other players in the team can even get themselves in position on. And so I feel like this night was another one where Owen was super solid and super dangerous. And it doesn't show up as much on the score sheet, but the things he can do are really unique in terms of what he brings to the profile of this club.
Yeah, so many moments where he wins a 50-50 ball or he receives in a tight space and turns out or plays out. He tracks back, like tracking back several times and stealing balls off of Houston players in transition. Just so many times he came up very useful. And you're right, like none of that stuff is going to show up on a box score, but it's stuff that any coach would love to have on their team.
Yeah, and this is a reminder, if you happen to be working for the Austin FC front office and we've requested to have Owen Wolff on the show, now's the time to remind y'all, we love Owen Wolff. He would be great on the show.
Yeah, so we talked about all the changes that kind of happen midway through the second half. Some subs, players getting tired. And then one thing Nico said in the post-game press conference was that they didn't learn their lesson from the DC game, where they get an early lead, they come back out after half, they lose focus for 1 second, and they get punched in the nose. And that kind of happens here, where Houston starts getting some chances, partially because they're going for it, they're throwing numbers forward, they made some adjustments, but also because Austin just isn't urgent enough, isn't focused enough on what they need to do in that moment, and it opens up some chances for Houston, and that leads to this penalty. The foul happens in the 73rd minute. The penalty is maybe taken, I don't know, like the 78th minute, something like that. Much later.
Well, it was 80 in the press
minute.
release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a Houston corner. It gets rebounded out. Robert Taylor slices his first clearance. The ball falls back down, still in the box. He has the challenge to try to get a second clearance away. Makes some contact with Ortiz, their center back. Ortiz goes down. Play goes on. There's finally a foul for Austin, so it's going to be Austin's ball. VAR holds up the game. They send center ref to the screen. He stands at the screen for 3 full minutes. The rule of thumb here is clear and obvious, right? So,
right,
in a moment where he did not give the pin during the run of play, to go and look at a very soft foul for 3 minutes and then end up giving it, that's not how this is supposed to work.
That does seem to defy the terms clear and obvious, for sure. Like he should be able to walk over, see it, be like, oh yeah, we screwed this up, and walk straight back, but it shouldn't take this amount of time.
What is your take on this foul, Jeremiah?
I don't like it as a foul. I mean, at all. I feel like it was barely, there's barely anything going on there. To your point, there was a lot of stuff that had been let go, especially on the other side, that didn't get called. I was really surprised this one ends up being called a foul at all.
Yeah, there is contact. It is very light contact. It does not hinder Ortiz's ability to run or play the ball. I think sometimes where I will give the benefit of the doubt is if contact is made on the front side of the player's leg, and you could reasonably argue like tripping. Like if I tried to move my leg forward, I would have tripped and fell. The contact is on the back of Ortiz's leg. It is very light. Ortiz feels it. Time passes, and then he decides, I'm going to fall down now. He didn't need to.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yes.
Nothing stopped his leg from moving forward. That's my main beef with this, is like contact happens all the time. If you touch a guy on the back with the same amount of force, you're not stopping him from doing the thing he was about to do. That's how I view this contact. Yes, there was contact. If it were on the front side of his leg and he goes down, okay, fair enough. He tripped him. that's not what happened. And I just have a lot of problem with this specific foul being given in the way that it was. But McGlynn takes the penalty, takes it very well, and scores. And Houston is just re-energized at this point. I was on the rewatch. I was kind of expecting for Austin to look bad for the rest of the game, but it's not really true. They still had some stretches of sustained possession, got some chances in the final third, but were also trying. Like, I think it would kind of went against them. Their success went against them a little bit, where they believed that they could score a third goal. And so they were fighting really hard for it. And that's a good thing. Like, we've seen them be a little bit too timid. And so I'd say, yeah, go for it. Go get that third one. But you're also opening yourself up. You're stretching the game. You're letting Houston get in behind, where they were almost never doing that in the first half. And so, and that's how they beat us when we played them in Houston, was we let the game get too open and they played through us and hit us when we were tired. And that's what starts happening. And that's how Houston gets that second goal. Austin is tired. They lose focus for 1 second. Houston plays through their lines too easily. They spring Anali wide left. Austin defenders crash into their own box preparing for a cross, but Anali cuts it back to the top of the box, and there's nobody there when McGlynn arrives. He hits it first time with his left foot. I think Stuver probably has the initial shot saved, but Svatok gets a foot on it, and it puts it just out of reach for Stuver, and it goes in. Just like such an annoying goal that, like, Houston did well to take advantage of what we gave them, but we didn't need to give it to them.
Right. And this is another one of those. There's a game earlier in the year. I mean, a goal earlier in the year. I don't remember where it was. Well, like, this was also in the South End, where it's just like, what in the heck just happened, right? Like, it didn't seem that threatening of a moment in the buildup. It felt like the kind of play that Austin shut down over and over again on the night. And then it's just all of a sudden a couple mistakes, and then it's even on the score sheet. And it was like the building got really quiet, because I think everybody kind of had the same reaction. It's just one of those gut punch goals.
Yeah. So there were 2 subs. Austin used their final 2 subs right after this. And I can't remember who it was in the post-game presser. They asked about the subs. Like, do you wish you would have done something different? And I imagine what that question was getting at is like, should you have made those last 2 subs earlier and gotten some fresh legs on the field? And he was like, well, we were going to make the subs, and then the goal happened. And I'm like, well, that was in the 89th minute. Like,
yeah.
And you know me, I don't like to harp on sub choices too much, but in a game where, like, your team's starting to look tired, fresh legs can be useful, and fresh legs hurt us on this goal. Not having the fresh legs hurt us on this goal. And so I kind of wish Nico would have made the changes a bit more. I get, like, wanting to leave guys in who are doing well, but they looked cooked. Like, several guys on the field looked cooked and they were not going to be able to defend the way that they were earlier in the game anymore. And that became very evident at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, and this is still, like, Austin's not the deepest team in the world, and there's 2 players coming in that will help that, but Austin is deep enough at this point where guys you can bring in off the bench for 10 or 15 minutes are better than dead-legged guys who are starting. This is not,
for sure.
We're not pulling Aiden Stanley, and I don't know. I was trying to think of the guy that, like, played forward and then, like, went to USL. Manny Perez. Yeah, those guys aren't walking through that door. They're not coming in. It's like, there's enough talent. You can go ahead and make these subs earlier. That was one of the criticisms that I saw really strongly online after that, like, that night after the match, and then again all throughout Sunday and Monday. It's just this frustration with the lack of making changes from this team. Looked like they were begging for a change.
Yeah, so the last few minutes, Austin gets a couple of half chances. Houston gets a few decent chances, but it all comes down to a foul at the top of the box. Austin gets a free kick. Uzuni has the ball in his hands. Biro went over and acted like he wanted to take it. Danny Pereira talks Uzuni into giving him the ball and letting him try it. I saw quite a few people upset about Danny taking this free kick. What do you think about that one?
I don't. I mean, I think it's fine with Danny taking it. I mean, it's kind of whoever's available. Like he's just as good as anybody else at the free kick. I don't think when Owen, if it's not Owen, like I don't know that Austin has anybody who's just like nailed on. Like, yeah, that's the person I want taking this kick.
I think Uzuni would have been my choice, but also from the angle, like we've seen Biro hit balls from that distance quite well. So maybe the left footer would have been. Estevez said in the post game, I think he asked something about it, and he said we let guys, like if guys are feeling it, if they want to take it, we give them the leeway to have that discussion and take it if they want to. So earlier in the second half, Austin gets a free kick out wide, and Danny whips in a ball that's like half shot, half cross, but it's in such a dangerous position that Bond has to save it. If he doesn't save it, it is going in the goal. And so I imagine after that one, Danny's like, okay, I've got this. I'm feeling good right now. Let me take it. And then he skies it over the crossbar. But I understand like wanting to have the guy you paid a bunch of money to score goals to let him try to score a goal. But also these moments are pretty low percentage. So I'm not going to get too worked up about which guy takes a 2% chance shot of the ball going in.
And this one, if I remember right, this is like basically the last action of the match, right? Doesn't he like sky it and then they blow the whistle right after? Yeah, very anticlimactic for that to be the final, because everybody's standing and cheering about like this is last second dramatic, so that it's like into the stands and there's the whistle and we all go home.
Yeah. So Guilherme Biro ends up on the team of the week for getting his goal. I think he had a good game. I think you could argue, again, it's like a defender scores a goal, they're straight into the team of the week. It doesn't really matter, but several guys had good games, and I think Biro is one of them. Let's get into what we liked, what we didn't like, and what we learned. Where do you want to start?
So I'd say one thing I liked is we've talked about this a couple times now. It's just the offensive flow in the first half. I think it's not strictly late in the first half, but I feel like we've seen the good part of playing with the ball a lot over the last few matches, and we've seen more offensive output from Austin for that. So like the flow, the guys, understanding each other, a little bit in the attack, the way that everybody's like not nailed to the floor in their position, and there's like some flexibility and stuff, I think continues to be something that we did not see a lot earlier in the year when Austin was on the pace to score fewer goals than any other club in the history of the league. Like that over the last 5 matches where the results haven't necessarily always been there, like we've seen a lot of that. So that was a real highlight for me.
Yeah, the chemistry and confidence is continuing to grow in this team. And yeah, that's great. I put the defensive plan and discipline. I've already talked about that quite a bit, but I want to give a shout out to Osman Bukhari for his defensive work in this game. I've given him kudos a few times this season, but there's one moment specifically in this game that kind of highlights what I'm talking about here, where Austin, they were defending in a loose 4-4-2, but it didn't ever stay that way. There seemed to be there would be times where the wingers would press up onto their back line, or even Danny would come from central midfield and press up on the back line. And it was very organized. They were rotating around each other and covering for each other in a really clear and organized way. And Bukhari was part of that. And I think I said last week or 2 weeks ago, like how I love a DP attacker being fully bought into the defensive game plan, trying to learn and grow and get better at making those decisions. And there's one point where, they'll make a back pass and Austin will press up. And Bukhari was one of the further back players in that front 6 that was doing the pressing. The back line had not pressed up as high. And so I don't remember who it was. One of the Houston players was just like creeping in behind our front 6 who were pressing, and Bukhari noticed. And instead of, if he were just being a robot and doing what the coach told him, he would have kept moving forward and gone and marked the guy further up the field. But he caught this and instead moved inside and cut off that passing lane, and until a midfielder could drop back in, and then he went back wide. And I want to say Ilya was still in the game, but Ilya saw it too and like clapped for him. It was like, yes, that was great. Good job. But I just love how organized and bought in everyone is to the defensive game plan. that fell apart at a certain point, but I don't think it was effort or desire. I think it was just being really tired and losing focus for that reason.
And you
I
have
also
Guillermo Biro note too. Go for
yes,
that one.
I don't know if you saw this in person. I was hoping they caught it on the broadcast. This was one of the it wasn't the worst broadcast production I've seen, but there was quite a few moments where they missed the ball in play, some unnecessary close-ups of things that missed more interesting things that were happening. So there's an offside call around the 50th minute. The center ref raises his hand to say like offside, and they'll just like kind of walk backwards, and he just kind of stopped and was standing in a spot with his hand straight up in the air. Biro was up in the box, and I think maybe he was the one who got called offside. But on his way back, as the ref is standing there with his arm straight up in the air, Biro jumps up and gives the referee a high five as he runs past him and then keeps running. And the ref just acts like nothing happened, which I think he probably could have given him a yellow for that. But
yeah.
The ref stands perfectly still and just like takes it and then doesn't move, doesn't look back, doesn't do anything. And Biro just keeps running. I was like, I've been saying that like MLS is going to fall in love with this man, but they didn't even put it on the broadcast, so nobody got to see it. If anybody has footage of that, please send it to me.
Yeah. Okay. So things we didn't like. I will start with my note. It's Jack McGlynn, which is a player that I loved when he was in Philadelphia and he was in the other conference, and I didn't have to worry about seeing him 2 or 3 times a year. And we weren't always struggling for the playoff run. And so I think he's like now on my like Mount Rushmore of hate with Michael Boxall, which came really quickly. And it's just because he's so good, and he gets both goals in this match. So yeah, I'm gonna say that this is a thing I do not like.
Jack McGlynn annoys me in a very specific way, a different way than Michael Boxall. As I've grown older, I try to keep an open mind and understand that young people are going to do things that I don't understand and don't like, and try to just say, well, that's fine. It's not for me. I'm sure old people didn't like the things I did when I was young. But Jack McGlynn's goal celebration really annoys me and really turns me into an old man yelling at clouds. He does like this stupid like mask thing. And I read that he borrowed it from Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks. Like, first of all, you are not Jalen Brunson, sir. But there's like this specific type of Instagram pilled Gen Z thing that he very much embodies that just really, really bothers me. And I don't like it about myself.
So you're like kind of going all caps on yourself and Jack McGlynn too at the same time?
A little bit. Yeah. I also put I didn't like the refereeing. Maybe we already talked enough about that, but I thought he did a bad job.
Yeah.
I didn't think that our direct balls were sharp enough on that night. There were several opportunities where either playing in transition or we would break open Houston's defense and have a chance to play someone in behind, and the ball just wouldn't be sharp enough. And it's not 1 or 2 and they go off. Like they go wrong. That's understandable. There's 5, 6, 7 times when this happens where we could have had Bukhari or Uzuni or someone else in behind one-on-one with the goalkeeper, and it just doesn't come off. And that's the kind of stuff we need to come off every once in a while. And it comes down just the passing being sharp enough, and it just wasn't on this night. And that leads into my other thing I didn't like was Uzuni didn't get enough chances. I don't think it's his fault. As Tevez said in the post-game press conference, he needed better service. And I think some of those sharper direct balls would have been a better way to get him service. Houston was defending really compactly in the first half. That makes it hard to get your striker service, but I think there's some wasted opportunities where we could have gotten him some shots, and instead I think he had one shot that was a really well-worked little moment that Bond did good to save.
Yeah, and this is one that feels exceptionally frustrating or stands out a lot because we did get a little bit of the, I would say resurgence, but he hasn't surged in MLS. But like we saw some realization of the potential that Uzuni's had over the last couple games, and it feels like maybe it's something that Well, I'm sure Nico didn't tell him to not do that, but like it feels like we should have prioritized like continuing to build upon that success that he built, and there just weren't the chances there. If it's just, I guess maybe like, yeah, the accuracy of the passing has a lot to do with it. Like I didn't feel like the chances are there for the taking. It wasn't that Houston was locked on to shutting down Miraturo Zuni. Just Austin didn't take advantage of what was in front of him.
Yeah. And then we already kind of hinted at this, Jeremiah, but what did we learn?
We learned that Copa Tejas, I think we learned that Copa Tejas is like Houston's, period. Not only is it not available to Austin anymore, but now with many games left to play, 2 games left to play, like the cup belongs to Houston.
Yeah, we could, if we beat Dallas in these remaining 2 games, we could tie Houston on points, but the first tiebreaker is head-to-head points, which Houston has 4 points on us now, and we have the 1. And so we can't beat Houston out, even if we win on goal differential. That's the next tiebreaker down. So we are out of contention for Copa Tejas, but we can still make absolutely sure that FC Dallas cannot win it. I think they mathematically can still win it.
I think that's right. Yeah.
But we can make sure that doesn't happen. And then also, who cares about Copa Tejas? I don't even care about this trophy. All that matters is the Western Conference standings. And if we beat Dallas twice, we're going to be well above both of these teams in that measure.
Yeah, and I feel like you've done half the McGuire Woods consulting read now already. So maybe we should go ahead and take another break, and then we will talk about the news we have left. Preview FC Dallas. Get to some of the listener questions we couldn't get to last time. So stick around. There's still plenty of good show left. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. You can fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know or need a Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
And our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space, from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only supports this podcast because Austin FC is the highest ranked Texas team in the Western Conference table. And Copa Tejas doesn't matter. I even heard, someone told me that Copa Tejas is a myth, that it's not even real.
That may be true. Nobody's seen it.
No, we certainly haven't. We certainly weren't told not to touch it when we were very close to it one time.
That's right. Not us.
Contact our friends McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we are back. We're going to do an FC Dallas preview. We're going to talk about some player rumors. We're definitely calling these rumors, not reports. But first, let's start off with this most MLS-y of MLS trades that happened this week, Jeremiah.
And it's not even just the trades, because I feel like the first deal that we'll talk about comes, and everybody's like, this is an MLS trade. And there's like the second deal, and you're like, no, this is an MLS trade. And then there's like the third one that is kind of maybe related to it or maybe not directly. And you're like, yes. Do we miss Sam Stejskal and Pablo Maurer writing about this league? Because these are the moments that they were like made for. Absolutely. So I'll start with the first one. So
yeah,
early in the week,
there's a lot of weeds to dig into. So let's start simple with the Austin part of all of this.
Yeah. So Austin, early part of the week, buys a 2025 international roster spot from the Philadelphia Union for $50,000 in 2025 GAM. And so the discussion on that day, which I believe lasted for a day, was like, well, clearly Austin is not going to trade for a 2025 international roster spot unless Austin plans to use it on a player that's inbound at some point in the near future.
Right. So for about 24 hours, we were like, where's the green smoke? Like, this expires at the end of the year, so they wouldn't buy it unless they were going to use it. They're absolutely signing an international player. Well, do you know the exact amount of time? Around 24 hours later?
It's around 24 hours. I didn't look it up.
But that's when we get the next bit of news, which is that Austin FC had then traded that exact international roster spot to the New England Revolution for $225,000 in GAM, which they flipped it for, I'm bad at math here, is that $175K in profit?
Total 175K in profit. So then it becomes like Rodo's just like playing arbitrage game and like calling one team and seeing like what the best deal he can get on a slot is, and then calling another team and seeing what the best deal he can get a slot is to sell, and somehow becomes a genius.
So we then had our hopes crushed of this new international player coming in. I think some people, rightly so, like understandably so, were upset about that. I almost think this is too funny for me to be upset about. The fact that Rodo flipped a spot for profit and like somehow was like, these aren't secrets. Like everyone knows how many roster spots people have. And so he played two teams against each other, like politicked it in such a way that he came out well ahead in this trade. I don't know that we'll ever get the full story of how or why that happened, but I want to call back to something somebody said to us off the air while recording this show, Jeremiah. We won't say their name because this was off mic, off the record, more or less. But one of the Apple TV broadcast talent that we've had on the show in the last year and a half or 2 years told us that they had heard that Rodo didn't really was kind of in over his head with the MLS roster rules stuff, and that they thought he really needed to bring someone in who was kind of an expert on that specific thing. And then this deal comes out and I'm like, oh, I think he understands it pretty well, actually.
Yeah, and that was to your point when you first interviewed him, and he's like, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with $1,865,414 a TAM or whatever, but it was like very much down to the dollar, like what he knew. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still TBD on if Rodo is a total genius or just kind of a blustering egotist, but this gives me at least some hope that he understands the game to the extent where he can actually take advantage of other people's misfortune or maybe stupidity in order to let Austin FC profit off of it. So let's dig in. Now we're getting into the weeds of like how and why this happened. Why did Philly sell us a spot so cheap? And then why did New England buy it for so expensive? And so I think it's the starting point is New England made a trade at the beginning of the year for an international slot from Vancouver. But part of this agreement reportedly was that they were going to give it back to Vancouver by the end of the summer transfer window. This is from some reporting in New England that they signed a player named Ignatius Ganago, and it was on a 6-month loan, but if he made X number of appearances, that loan was automatically extended. And so that happened, which caused them to maybe some other things as well. Either way, they thought they were going to have an extra international roster spot to give back to Vancouver, and they did not. And I think this is maybe the start of somebody finding this out and Rodo trying to take advantage of it. So why couldn't New England just buy the spot from Philly? If Philly's selling for 50, why wouldn't New England just buy the spot from them? Do you have any theories or favorite theories on that one?
Well, I mean, I think there's maybe them wanting not to help. So then and help out the other team in the Eastern Conference. And then isn't it true that this spot only became available super late because Ty Barbo got his green card, which allowed Philly to have an extra spot? I believe that happened like right before Austin makes this deal. So
okay,
maybe
I didn't even know that.
Maybe Rodo's got somebody in the office that happens to know who's getting green cards and whether they're going to be available. I don't know, but I mean, I think the only thing I can see is like somebody not wanting to help like a conference foe out, but it seems like that happens a lot with teams when it
and also I thought about that too, but then like sorry, I haven't done this yet. Like New England's
Perfect.
GAM spins just as well as Austin's GAM does, and you're then taking
Yeah.
GAM away from a rival. But maybe that was part of the deal where Rodo says you can drain GAM from your rival's pocket while also not doing business with them and helping them with this international spot.
Right.
Maybe that played into it. There's also Jonathan Tannenwald, who's a like national reporter, I think based in Philly and reports on Philly, was tweeting about this, or maybe on Blue Sky, and said that an Austin Academy coach just happened to get hired in Philadelphia on the same day that this was announced.
True. Yeah.
And so
I saw that.
It was like, was there some like handshake with that? I was like, do Academy coaches need to be traded? I feel like most of those guys are probably on 1-year contracts. I figured they could just walk whenever they wanted, but it like Tannenwald was suggesting that maybe that was part of the deal too. I don't know what the backstory is. We'll probably never know what the backstory is, but all I know is we came out ahead GAM wise. Like we did pretty well out of this trade. New England, on the other hand, paid over $400K in GAM for an international roster spot that they only used for half the year. And the going rate is like 200, 250K most of the time. They played almost double that for half the time. They did a bad job.
There's no doubt about that one, for sure. It's one of these deals that we'll never fully understand or know. And it's one of the things that make people who play Football Manager with MLS crazy in the head that there are these kinds of rules, but it's also kind of fun to talk about.
Yeah, I know some people's eyes glazed over on that last bit. So let's get into some more fun stuff, or I guess like interesting stuff to talk about. You have this point written as just Julio out ? So I'm not fully up on all of the breadcrumbs here. How much meat is there to this? Is there actually like intel coming from someone or little things that we've seen, or is it mostly just vibes and wistful looks based?
I would say it's mostly just reading vibes, and I think with the most recent signing in, although that doesn't leave Austin like fully loaded for lineups. Like if you believe in a future where Austin is going to make another incoming move this summer, I feel like one of the things that you have to do is free up some money. And I think back to Austin's acquisition of GAM before, like maybe that's just what Austin needed to do to like be back at even because of transactions that have been made earlier in the year. And there was never really anything in it for him. But like Julio seems like a very likely outbound prospect either at midseason or for sure at the end of the year.
I think for sure at the end of the year, but it just seems like there's been a lot of people acting as if it's happening imminently. And there's based on some like Instagram reporting of his wife taking a trip and things like this. But I was just curious if there's like any more concrete stuff that I had missed here.
I know we got this like 30-second video of him just like staring off into the distance and not participating in warm-ups at all, as if he was completely distracted and disconnected from the team before the match. That was one thing.
In months, like several months ago, I saw him do the exact same thing.
So maybe we're all reading too much into nothing, but it's practically speaking, like if somebody's going to be out, it feels like it's got to be Julio to make any spots available if Austin needs to do that.
O'Brien would be the more useful one just because of the international roster spot. But both would open up a senior roster spot, which is also very valuable. But yeah, I think it is with Julio specifically. I think it is a matter of time. I don't think they'll bring him back. They're not going to pick up his option year. If he were willing to come play on a supplemental spot, maybe they would bring him back. But I kind of think he could get a better offer than that somewhere, either in MLS or going back to Costa Rica. I think he could do better than senior minimum. So yeah, who knows? We'll find out one day. But I don't think Julio's days are very long in Austin.
So do you even? I guess we should. You want to talk about these like super rumors?
Very briefly, specifically because they're all tied to one source, right? Like there's this is Brazilian, right? The RTI
Correct.
Esporte or whatever. So there's several accounts in Austin who are essentially like aggregators where they're the first one. They have alerts set up, and they're the first ones to repost things that they find in other places. I don't want to say that like as if it's a bad thing. I think it's a good resource, but it's a different thing than what like Tom Bogert or like a transfer reporter does, where they have primary sources. They're making calls. They're getting told firsthand information. Whereas like aggregators are just finding it on the internet first and putting it all in one place, which I love. Like it's a great resource to be able to know an account that you can go to and like, okay, here's all the Austin FC transfer rumors for the last month. But one that had been getting picked up a lot by these aggregators is this RTI Esporte, I don't know how you say it, but they've been tweeting about Austin links a lot lately. And to the extent where it looks like maybe they just found out like, oh, Austin fans are really active online. Maybe we should really pay attention more often.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a midfielder playing in Brazil for Fluminense named Joaquin La Vega that the report was like, they've made initial contact. An offer hasn't been made. It was like, that's probably true of like 100 players that Austin has reached out and just said, hey, is this player available? Okay, maybe one day we'll call you back. So it's like barely worth reporting on. And then this one is kind of this next one, Scott Twine from Bristol City. They were linking him for, it was like $3 million sale. And several people started raising red flags about this one. And a friend of mine, Logan Okwan, he was like, I'm actually a Bristol City fan. Like I watch them and I know this player. He is absolutely not going to be for sale for that cheap. He's their best player. They bought him for $4 million last year. And he's their best player. And like, if they lost him, they would be trash. And so he's like, they're not going to sell him for anything less than 10 million, probably. Meaning he would absolutely be a DP. Austin doesn't have that space. And so just so much of it doesn't match up that it seems like somebody said like, oh, there's a 10 that might be available. Let's link them to Austin and see what kind of engagement we can get.
see who goes for it. Yeah.
But it seems all that to say, it seems like none of these are actually going to happen. And so
yeah, I was going to say, I think it's so we can close this section out. Like,
and there's not really any like plausible reports right now of like links to Austin, which means maybe we're done. Like maybe this is it. And I don't think that means great things for our like postseason chances. We said earlier, I think this team's good enough to make the playoffs and maybe even sneak through a first round, but I don't think this team is good enough to make a deep run. And that makes me a little frustrated if we don't make any changes now that could change those chances.
Yeah, I think this is a build for long term. I think is where we're at right now. And I think we continue to have decent amount of money coming off the books at the end of the year, and Rodo's patient. And I think maybe we just have to look toward the future again. It's just at some point that becomes sort of frustrating to always be talking about next season.
Yeah. All right, let's get into our FC Dallas preview real quick, and then we can finish up the show with some listener questions. So let's talk about Dallas.
Yeah, so Dallas, another Texas team that's below Austin FC in the table, had like what I think was probably what seemed on paper like a decent offseason, but again has just not shown like a lot of strong results. So they are in the Western Conference now in 11th place, 28 points. For reference, Austin's in 7th on 34, worse on goal differential, so -8. Then Austin did beat Portland, but not a great run of form before that. It's like this is another one of these games, especially at home, that it seems like if Austin's going to end up anywhere decent in the playoff position, this is one that you should and need to win.
Yeah, they played this weekend for the first time without Lucho Acosta, who got sold to Brazil, I believe. He's in theory their best player. He didn't seem to be happy there. They weren't getting the best version of him there. So I have a little bit of a concern that it's going to be one of these situations where like, yeah, of course he's your best player, but maybe if he's not happy there, you're better off without him. I don't I don't think, and I hope it's not true with FC Dallas, because they really don't have anybody else on the team who can do anything near what Acosta is capable of. Petar Musa is still very, very good. He's a really good striker. He's been really good for a lot of this year. That still concerns me, but the rest of the team, again, I said this many times about Houston this week, that if we play half decent, we should beat this team pretty handily. Like, it shouldn't be, we don't need to play lights out. We don't need to be amazing. We can be decent and beat this team. I think this is true about Dallas as well.
Yeah, and I feel like even with Musa, so he scored 13 goals in the year, but like somebody's got to get the ball to him, and somebody's got to be another kind of threat. Because if it's just him, like I feel like Austin generally is defensively disciplined enough and strong enough to be able to stand up to like an individual player who makes a kind of contribution, as long as there aren't multiple threats.
Yeah. As far as Austin's side, I'm like, I don't think they need to change much, really. I don't think, there's been times where I'm like, oh, I really want to see this guy start. I really want to see this change. I would be happy if they rolled out the exact same starting 11 from this week and maybe monitor energy, make a sub a little bit earlier, and then also just learn a lesson and say like, okay, once we get tired, focus up, stay ready.
Sub.
Don't get punched in the nose while you're resting. Those are the little things I want them to change. I don't want them to make wholesale changes because I don't think they need to win this game. I was about to say something. I forgot what it was.
I was going to follow up with don't get a BS penalty call. Also would be helpful in terms of holding on.
Yeah. We can't really control that one, but I mean, this is an opportunity. We already said Copetejas is not in the picture anymore, but being able to put nails in FC Dallas's coffin, we can't like truly eliminate them, but we can increase those chances pretty substantially with a win this week. And then in September, when we play them again with a win in that one, like we could be FC Dallas killers essentially. And that is a pretty good consolation prize for not winning Copetejas.
Yeah, we specifically could put a 9-point gap between Austin and Dallas this week. So even if we don't kill Dallas's playoff chances outright, like we'll go a long way toward making sure they don't finish tied or ahead of Austin in the table.
Yeah. Okay, let's finish up the show with some listener questions. Jeremiah, what do we have first?
All right, let's start with this one from Brian Lairs. It says, with a break in the first team schedule, because he sent it when there was a break in the first team schedule, not this week, it's a good time to check in on the second team. How are Torres and Burton progressing? Will they be able to help the first team next season? Anybody else having a standout season that might be able to help next season? We haven't talked about the second team a lot. Like, who do you see as the leading prospects from that group to make a contribution to Austin? And I like that we're being realistic and talking about next year and not expecting sort of this solution to anything that's going on wrong in Austin to come from that group for this year.
Yeah, because that's a fool's errand, because none of those guys were ever going to make a difference on the first team. But I still see Irvin Torres as the top prospect. It's hard to say, just because of the style of player he is, the position he plays in. It's hard to know exactly like where he is in his development. He's still very good, one of the better players on the team as a teenager. But he plays like a tempo setting central midfield that's not going to get on the box score super often. And also, like, he's the kind of player that I think will be better with better players around him. And so when playing at that level, I think it's also makes it harder to really gauge what his ceiling is. Micah Burton, on the other hand, like, he is a little bit older. I think he's 19 now. My stock on him has gone down significantly over the last couple of years. Not because I think he's bad. I just think he's plateaued a little bit. He has gotten better playing with the second team. His role has increased, but the last little stretch, I don't know what the cause of it is, but he's not regularly starting games anymore. He's coming off the bench. There was one game a couple of weeks ago where he just wasn't on the match day roster at all. I don't know if there's injury or something else going on, but he's not an every game 90-minute or even every game 75-minute player. He's often playing 25, 30 minutes, which is not a good sign for someone in his position. Like, he's at the age where you would like a homegrown to at least be ready to play trash can minutes for the first team, and they clearly don't think he's there yet. Otherwise, I think we would have seen more of that at this point. But progress and development is not linear, so I'm not saying like he's done, but right now I'm not super high on his chances of being like a real contributor for the first team. I think he's good enough that he has a future as a professional soccer player. I'm just not sure at what level.
Yeah, and I think another sort of point of reference is that 2 or 3 years ago, there's regularly talk about him getting called to like the youth national teams at the level he was at, and that feels like a very distant future. I mean, sorry, very distant past right now, given sort of what he's doing, and we haven't seen those kinds of call ups in a while. So, it feels like he hasn't developed, and maybe that just becomes like, he's also always kind of positionally ambiguous. If like the places he was playing, I remember us talking 2 or 3 years ago about where he would play with the youth national team or where he would play Austin FC2. Maybe it's not his best spot, and maybe he's just never really like found his niche.
Yeah. I mean, I hope the best for him. I hope he does pull through and prove me wrong.
Well, let's go to this other one from Brian.
A couple of other names worth mentioning here. Jorge Alastue. Is another player on this team. He's the Barca Academy product. I think he's 21 years old, is doing really well. I think like if we had to pull one guy up to play on a short-term loan, I think he would be the one at this point. That being said, he is still like we've always said, like if your age starts with a 2 and you're on the second team, like your chances of getting any higher than that are already fairly low. The fact that he would require an international roster spot, that puts him in like that Val Noel territory of like, you're probably good enough to make an MLS roster, but nobody's going to spend an international slot on you. I think Alastue is probably in that same boat, that he would be the better player right now, but I don't know that he'll ever get more than maybe that short-term call-up, and maybe not even that.
Well, so he comes up in this other question from Brian, which is basically, will the players we have signed from abroad, the second team, count as homegrown if they sign with the first team? And I believe it's dependent upon how long they spend with the second team.
I think that's not even true. I think they have to play in the academy. It's a year in the academy. That's the way I understand the rules that I read. But so I don't think the second team actually counts towards that rule. So Alastue, any of these other international players, I think they would need to qualify for a green card to not count as an to not count as an international roster spot. But I don't think they could ever be a homegrown player.
Which totally makes sense, because like otherwise you would sign players from all around the world and park them on your second team for a year in order to be able to take advantage of all the things, all the advantages that the homegrown designation provides. I always forget that Owen counts as an academy player somehow. I mean, I guess he was there.
He was here.
It's very loose.
And training at Austin FC. We did not have an academy for his age at that point in time, but he was on a team by himself playing in our academy.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Roy Shamir. Roy, I'm going to paraphrase here, but he's essentially asking, like, what makes the consistently successful MLS teams consistently successful? Like, and he mentions LAFC, Seattle, Philadelphia. Is it their academy? Is it getting more out of mid-salary or supplemental players? More second-team players progressing to the first team? Outgoing transfers that give more GAM to the first team? I would say all of the above, right? Like some combination of all of the above. Seattle and Philly, they do really well of bringing players out of their academy and have a really good culture, a really strong next man up mentality of everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do when their number is called. LAFC has some of that, but they used their cultural cachet of being in Los Angeles to attract players that maybe wouldn't be within their reach. They scout really well, and any player that they've missed on be it U22s or DPs, and they don't miss a lot. But when they have missed, it's been on players that they can pretty easily sell again. And so they've not fully like crashed out on anybody ever. Not that I can think of, maybe a couple of times, but anybody that's not been a success for them, they've ended up turning a profit or at least getting their money back on them at least. So it is a combination of using what resources you have available, being really smart, and not making mistakes. And so I think Austin has a way to go in several categories before we're in the same conversation with any of these three teams.
Yeah, and I think that the interesting one for me, it really is LAFC, just like the turning of the roster, like at exactly the right time, right? Like I think this is a difference with Austin. Like I think Austin has a tendency to hold on to guys, to re-sign guys, to have Alex Ring's weird auto trigger renewal. Like in LA is, I mean, if anything, they err on the side of cutting loose of guys too soon, which is really ultimately probably the better way, as long as you're able to like recruit talent afterwards to do it.
Yeah. So this comes back to a question we answered last week that I want to change my answer to. Scott Speck reminded me of, it was the like worst contract question. And I said Julio Cascante, because I was just thinking about like length of the contract and how much money it was. But Scott reminded me of the auto trigger ordeal with Rigoni and Alex Ring. I'm going to change my answer, factoring that in. Rigoni is the worst contract because he was a DP and then just had an auto trigger based on appearances, not performance, just how many times you touch the field, which is crazy. That's a terrible idea. Alex Rings was a terrible contract to lock him into another DP deal, again, based on probably appearances. I'm gonna put Diego Fagundes above Cascante as well because of all the escalators. Like his number just kept going up year after year. We saw that on LA Galaxy's books, right? That the man deserved a pay raise, but part of what LAFC, like you were saying, is so good at is they'll say like, yes, this guy deserves a pay raise, but we can't afford to be the ones to give it to him. And so we'll let him walk. We'll sell him early. We'll trade him, even though he's a good player for us. We're not going to bind ourselves in a way that could be detrimental to our future roster build. And so LAFC has moved on from good players, from players who have been really good for them, and saying, this is bad for our roster build. Let's move on now. Let's refresh. And it's served them really, really well, where Austin went all in on this group of players that did well for them that 1 year, but really tied their hands for the next 3 seasons after that.
Yeah, and luckily Austin's finally sort of feels like we can see the end of the path for that, and we're gonna be able to move on from it. So let's go on to some Robert Miller questions. He always has a bunch, so we're gonna go through a few. I think we'll start with this one. Since we have 4 center backs, what do you think happens next season? Do we get rid of Cascante or Heinzike, or do we keep both but sign Cascante to reduce salary? I feel like we've already talked about that one, but I would expect Julio Cascante to not be on this team come 2026.
Yeah, Brendan Heinzike is also on an option year. Am I remembering that correctly?
You're correct.
Okay,
I feel like that one's getting picked up.
I would expect you keep Brendan Heinzike. We've got Svatak and we've got Djordjevic coming in. That is a really good core of 3 right there that can compete for starting spots or fill in when someone's injured or whatever. And then the 4th one can be a younger person, maybe supplemental, maybe you take a chance on something a little bit cheaper there. I think, again, Cascante is probably not going to be around, but I think the other 3, including Heinzike, will be here, and that's going to kind of be your core for next year. So this next one is also Robert Miller. Do you think Wolf would have had the same success with the pieces Nico has, or do you think Nico is a better coach? What's your take here, Jeremiah?
I mean, coaches can include a lot of things. And I think the Josh Wolf that had sort of annoyed half the locker room by the end of last year would not have the same success that Nico Estevez has this year. There's a world where like I don't know. I don't know if Josh Wolf is like has the like leader of people part that would get the kind of commitment that people have to Nico. Like I don't think you could bring Josh Wolf into this team. I just don't see like that Josh Wolf having this sort of different approach that Nico has had to be able to endear himself to still a team that's not like super talented, and getting out of them what Nico has gotten out of them.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And then even if you look at just strictly tactical tendencies, I was always a strong proponent of if Josh Wolf had more talent on his team, those teams would have been better. He played in such a way that needed the talent because he didn't change the way he was going to play, right? I think this team maybe would be in a similar spot in the table with Josh Wolf as the coach, but probably for different reasons. Where maybe we would be scoring more goals, but we'd almost certainly be giving up more goals. Because it's not like we signed a bunch of defensive stalwarts on this team. Like it is about organization and buy-in from the players, and like organization from the coaches, buy-in from the players for the defensive game plan. That's the only reason Austin is anywhere near the playoff line right now, right? So
yeah,
I think like with Uzuni, with a healthy Vasquez, with Bukhari, if you're having Josh Wolf throw a bunch of players at the box like he did early in his career in Austin, that team's probably scoring some goals, but they're giving up a bunch of goals in transition too. I had a discussion with some buddies the other day where they were essentially like hinting at the idea of like maybe Josh Wolf was a better coach than Nico Estevez. And I've said this on the show, like I'm not 100% bought in on the fact that Nico Estevez is a great soccer coach, but I do like that there are times when I can see, okay, this isn't working in this game. They go into halftime and come out and he's fixed it. Like they've made changes. Something's happening different. That didn't happen very often over under
totally.
Josh Wolf.
Yeah.
And so I think for that reason, I'm taking Nico over him. Also, the things you talked about, like long term, I think players probably like Nico more. They're probably more willing to fight for him.
Yeah, well, let's go to this next one, and because this is what is your favorite beer made in Austin?
Well, we haven't talked for a long time, Jeremiah.
Yeah, well, I think for the long time, with like Sputnik was our answer to this question for both of us. And that may still be true. So I want to say, with the exception of Sputnik, or maybe let's ask it another way. Is there like an Austin beer that you're drinking a lot of right now that you enjoy?
Yeah, so I'm very much on, I'm sure you've seen this posted on group chats or on social media or whatever, like this curve of beer, like craft beer interest, where when you're like very young, you drink light beer. And then you get into like your craft beer snobbery and you're drinking the thickest, heaviest stouts and IPAs you can find. And then as you get a little bit older, you're like, actually, I want light beer again. But the good
lagers
kind
are
this
good.
time.
Yeah.
And I'm very much in that camp now. I almost exclusively drink like lighter lagers. I'm very picky about which ones I drink. So I drink good ones. But I do not drink mini stouts or things like that anymore. I'm very picky about which IPAs I drink, and I'm pretty brand loyal on my lagers that I drink. So I'm a big Live Oak fan. The Live Oak Pills, the pre-war Pills, and Live Oak Gold are all excellent. But there's a new contender in town, Meanwhile, the Meanwhile Lager, and then they have a new one called Little Darlin', I think. Those two might be taking the crown. They're certainly my favorites right now. We'll see where they shake out long term if maybe Live Oak comes back to the top spot. But those are my favorites right now.
Well, that's interesting you talk about Live Oak Gold, because a place that I go to before almost every game that you don't go to when it's absurdly hot because there's not a lot of indoor space is Turnstile. And I drink a lot of Live Oak Gold there because even if I'm outside, it's light, it's crisp. You know, it's not going to like make you feel heavy or contribute to the extra sweat. So I appreciate that. I've been drinking a lot of Secret Beach, the IPA from Meanwhile also.
I do like that one a lot. That one's really nice. Meanwhile is just good. They're a very good brewery. They They do a lot of styles really well. Okay, we can stop boring people with this now.
Do we have another soccer question to wrap this up?
Yeah, let's do one more. This is another Efecito question. Robert asked, what do you think the odds of the Irish kid who plays for Austin FC2 making it to the first team? And he says, Peter something, ? He's referring to Peter Grogan, whose dad I was sitting next to at a game.
Still my favorite story.
And he missed Peter scoring a goal because he went to the bathroom. I don't want to be cruel. The odds of Peter Grogan making the first team, I kind of want to say 0, but I feel like that's rude. I'm going to say 5%. Again,
I think that's very fair.
When your age starts with 2 and you're not just absolutely tearing up the league, he's been okay. I don't know what his stats are, but he's not tearing up the league. And his age does start with 2, I believe. Maybe he's 19. I think he's older than that, though. Your shots just go way down, especially as an international player. The odds are against you. So maybe he'll turn it on, but I would not put money on that. Anything else, Jeremiah, or should we wrap it up?
Well, one thing before we wrap it up. So this podcast that I was on called Austin Eras, that a guy named Adam Flagg hosts, it comes out every couple of weeks. He talks to different people around town that do things. This episode just came out today, Monday, which you can find everywhere you find your podcasts. Had a chance to talk about, growing up and leadership and all these kinds of things, but also this podcast in Austin FC. So if you want to know some of the backstory behind it, it was great. And at one point, he's like, well, tell me about the idea behind Moon Tower Soccer. And I was like, there's a bunch of guys that got together in a room, and whoever showed up got to be on the show, and it didn't really have really a specific direction. And at that point in time, I blanked on the original name of the show. Do you remember the very original name of that podcast?
Of the Anthem one?
Yeah. Before it was something else. Before it was the Anthem.
I don't think I know what it was called.
It was the Assist with Josh Jackson, Andrew Urban, and Zach.
Zach did that as a radio show, right?
Yeah. And it turned into the Anthem podcast because we were on the radio once, remember?
That's right. Yeah.
So that was I missed on that, but still, check it out. That was a fun walk down memory lane.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that in the show notes too. All right. Before we fully wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet. Join the Patreon. Get some cool stuff and support some podcasters that you hopefully like what they do. Thanks so much for listening. Next week, we will be back to review the FC Dallas match and then preview the upcoming away trip to Montreal and cover any other Austin FC news. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothings, you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.
Because they love cheap boom boom sauce.
Yeah.